Good evening, everyone. Here we are. This is a recording session, so there's not really the pageantry and the bells and whistles we have when Emperor Dan is brought into the recording room. But we know we're running a couple minutes behind. We got a minor tech glitch going on with our special guest geek, and he's working that out. But Dan, good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you too, man. It's good to be here. I've been looking forward to this since we decided we were going to do it. So here we are, and we're going to do it, as Jimmy Stewart says.
Providing insightful commentary as usual.
Yes, absolutely.
It's good that, Ross is here, so we can start now.
I guess it is a very good thing. Yes, thank you.
And he agrees that he's here and we can begin now.
All right. Well, then we're good to go.
Matt McGonigal is ready for horny Spock talk.
Matt, who isn't ever ready for horny Spock talk?
I'm ready. And of course, Helen is like,
great. De Woon.
I would love to go into combat with you with an Woon. I mean,
wow. Okay. What were the called those things?
Weren't those the Woon? Because first it was the Lirpa.
The Lirpa, then the Woon. That's correct. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Way to go, Superfan 1701.
It's been a while. It's all right. That's all right. Yeah. So I guess we could probably tell everybody what we're going to be doing. That'd be fun.
Well, I think they kind of know because they're attending.
It's amazing to me, though, dude, when
hold the phone, Dan.
About it.
Hold the phone.
What?
Haley Stoddart says, pretty sure I'm more important. That is a verifiable fact.
Absolutely. The most important person in the room has arrived, ladies and gentlemen.
No. The most important person whose comment is on screen has arrived.
Absolutely. Okay. Now I feel like we can begin. Now we've got everything we need now, right?
I mean, we had Ross.
Well,
we had Matt and we had Helen.
That's true.
And,
now we have Haley.
I mean, not to... Ross even says Haley's more important. Ross, you're just feeding in to her right now.
That's all right. That's all right. It's amazing to think that the show TOS was on for less amount of time than the time it has been since we last did a See It or Skip It.
Wow, I didn't need that context.
That's a lot. TOS, 3 seasons. It has been 4 years since we have done a See It or Skip It for any of the Star Trek shows, which is really pretty incredible when you think about it.
It is.
But I'm very excited for the fact that we are going to be doing another one here tonight with TOS Season 2. My goodness.
Math is hard. Can confirm.
Yes.
Dan, do you want to try to message Brian on Slack and see how things are going for him?
Yeah, I'll do that. I can.
For those of you who may have forgotten how See It or Skip It works, because Lord knows Dan and I did. When it is 4 years between types of episodes, you kind of got to refresh yourself. Wow, there's lots of shade.
Wow.
Let's be honest, hurting Dan is the tough part. Hurting me is relatively easy. You just wave coffee in my face and point me towards something sugary.
I got a drink.
But anyway, what are you drinking, by the way?
This is a thin mint martini.
Oh, that sounds yummy.
It is.
I'm having a vodka lemonade in the Anheuser-Busch Brewery Lights glass from Yield, Merrimack, New Hampshire.
Yep, got one of those.
Our once and former homestead.
Yes.
Our being my wife's and mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, so See It or Skip It. You and I kind of had to go through all of season 2 at TOS and decide what episodes we should skip, if there were episodes to skip.
I know, right?
I'm actually kind of surprised at how it turned out. I'm not going to spoil anything immediately, but I was stunned at your rating, quite honestly.
I will say that I was stunned at my rating as well. I kind of figured as I went through, I'm like, okay, can these be? Let's see it. I did have several borderlines, but when I saw my end result, I was like, wow, that's very surprising. And then I saw yours, and I was like even more surprised. So.
1, your face is borderline. 2, why is this all about you?
It's never about me.
That's not true. You're just I'm riding your coattails. I agree with Ross here. You still need to do recipes of the drinks you
can
make.
do that. This is a great one. This has creme de menthe, cream de cacao, vanilla vodka, and Bailey's came out with a mint something or other. I forget what the name of it is, but just throw this concoction together. It's a good St. Patrick's Day drink over the weekend, and I decided to have one more tonight.
Where is the chocolate, the creme de cacao?
Yes, I would say that is correct. Now you can also pour like liquid chocolate, like Hershey syrup in the glass if you want, but I didn't have any of that. So creme de cow, I like that, Ross McKinney.
Mm-hmm. Creme de cow.
Creme de cow. Creme de cow is good. Creme de cow good. Brian's having technical difficulties though, so it's kind of.
He is.
Yes, he is.
He may have to join us in progress, and that's fine. Yep. If that's the case, because we love Brian and he's a fantastic our guest geek tonight is going to be Brian Donahue from the Big Sci-Fi podcast, and of course Planet Zero, of which he is the author and reader of, which is a really exciting project he brought to us gosh, late last year, and said, would you be interested in this? Of course we were like, heck yes, let's do it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful story. If you haven't checked out Planet Zero, I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Every episode is a chapter of the book, and it's kind of cool to have the author read it himself. So yeah, definitely check it out. A mysterious planet sending signals to Earth, a crew determined to discover its origin, and an adventure that will keep you on the edge of your seat, Bill. Got to check it out. It's pretty awesome. Do you like that? Planet Zero.
Yeah, we're gonna play a quick game, Dan.
Okay.
Just you and I. Okay. And I have here 5 numbered isolinear chips.
Oh, all right. Okay.
I want you to pick one.
Okay.
Pick a number 1 through 5.
3.
Okay. I want you to remember that number 3 is your isolinear chip.
Orange. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you what this chip says by running it through a special app on my phone.
Okay.
So give me 1 second to scan this chip.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's scanning. And it says, you are a total dipshit. Congratulations, Dan.
That is a fun game.
That is a fun game.
Come from. What was yours? It's funny you didn't show it to me. You just read it and put it down, so I don't believe you.
I can just tell you what the chips say. I mean, I'm just relaying the message. It's kind of like like the magic 8-ball of sorts. You could get a different message from that chip next time. Who knows? Or maybe you get a different one from number 2, because you're a lot like number 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brian should be with us in just a minute. I just got a message from him. Hopefully he's getting those technical it's funny. If the M5 computer was here running the show, we'd probably all be dead. Yeah. That's all right.
Total dipshit.
Total dipshit. Hashtag total. I want everybody to use that hashtag at least once in the next 24 hours, but about somebody else besides me.
No, it's got to be about you.
All right. I can think of at least one person. 2
so
people.
when Brian comes on, we'll kick off the actual portion of the show that is the See It or Skip It. Dan and I will loop back after my business trip tomorrow and Thursday to kind of record the front end and the back end of it.
Yeah.
Which we typically refer to as wrappers. But because See It or Skip It sessions are usually about an hour and a half.
Well, yeah, they go long.
Yeah, they go long. If you try to keep your comments short, maybe they wouldn't. But
hey, you got to do what the people want, right? So I guess I should leave.
Oh, thank God. Thank God. And of course, we do have the results from the voting, which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The Google form didn't allow for comments and suggestions without doubling the number of questions. So we'll try to work that out for next time. For now, we just have results and no comments. So
that's good.
There.
I like it. Okay. There's a lot of episodes in season 2. Back in the old days when there were like 20-something episodes a season of everything, I miss that because you don't get that anymore.
Well, there's 26 in season 2. I believe there's 31 in the first season.
Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unreal. 31 episodes in a season of television.
Oh,
who do we have here?
This just in. Oh,
it
dropped
crashed.
Again. That's it, poor guy. I can only imagine what he is saying. It's a good thing his mic isn't hot right now, right?
We can make your mic not hot right now. See, look at that. Dan is muted, and no, you're really muted. You don't have to pretend, Dan. Yeah, I can tell you're faking it. You're just dumb. And then I can unmute
He's a jerk.
him.
Everybody jerk. Yeah.
What? Who's a jerk?
You're a jerk. Jerk face. I do like your neon Delta, though. That's very nice. Neon Delta shirt.
Thank you. I was going to ask you this, and I'll ask you this in front of the patrons.
Okay.
What would you think of a pin with the neon Delta where the black parts are black glitter?
I'm just concerned that you're rubbing yourself that way.
You should be concerned if I rub myself this way. Down here is not a problem.
I thought you were going to say black light, some kind of black light paint.
We're talking about a pin, you dummy.
I know. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Black glitter. And Brian, if you can hear us, we saw your face for a split second, and then StreamYard gave us the same message again about you need to connect your mic and cam before we can add you to the stream.
How about we get fancy? Okay, Lou's not too bright, so this is going to be difficult. But we could like have them create a pin, a neon pin, and like with a light in the back that you press and turns it on, makes it neon.
No. I just say we do the neon design. I'm being serious now.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And the black parts are the black glitter, and we call it the Midnight Neon Delta.
Ooh,
it's very, very cool.
Trek After Dark.
Oh, look at that. Special Vegas.
Yeah, I like it. That'll be good.
So why don't we kick off? Because I know we're super late. And we don't want to keep everybody all night long. So you and I, and when Brian joins us, we'll have him jump right in.
Yep.
And we'll go through and we'll start going through episodes and stuff. We're obviously going to kick it off with Amok time. And Dan, let's start it this way, okay? Let's pretend that we're starting the recording session now. Well, Dan, here we are, 4 years after the last time we did a Theater Skip It episode. Crazy. And we're about to embark on this journey once again. And believe it or not, we've never done this season.
We have never done this season. It's amazing. I mean, I can't even remember the last time we did 4 years ago. I don't even remember what we did back then. I think it was what, Enterprise season
Probably
1, I think, something like that. But yeah, I'm very excited that we're doing TOS. I'm very excited that we're doing season 2, and let's do it, man. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be great to see the reactions of our votes from between the two of us.
Now we do have a special guest geek tonight, our dear friend Brian Donahue from the Big Sci-Fi podcast, and also from Planet Zero, both on the Trek Geeks Network. Brian is, of course, a fantastic, podcaster. He writes his own music. He writes books. I mean, he's doing literally everything. And you and I are just kind of bumps on a log, doing nothing. So how do you feel now?
I like my bumps.
Whoa, this is a family show. So when Brian is able to join us, we'll go ahead and we'll bring him in. But for now, Dan, let's you and I start with season 2 of the original Star Trek, which I am now just calling Star Trek.
I like it.
Okay. It doesn't need to be called the original series. We know it's the original series. But that, of course, means we start with season 2, episode 1, Amok Time. And here's the log line. When Mr. Spock begins behaving aggressively because of Pon farr, Kirk discovers his first officer must return home to Vulcan to be married or die. When they arrive on Vulcan, Kirk is selected to be the challenger in a duel to the death against his best friend. And of course, Dan, because I just said a whole lot there, we're going to let you go first.
Absolutely. And how can this not be a see it? This is a perfect season opener. It's one of the best episodes of the entire series. We get to see a side of Spock that we aren't used to seeing. And anytime that Kirk's shirt gets split open and we get to see a bloodline across it, It's a good thing, and it's a see it for me. Seriously, though, it's a great Spock backstory of sorts. And to me, it really gives us a glimpse into Vulcan life for really the first time in Star Trek.
Hashtag bloody nips. Of course, Dan, there's no way that this episode could be anything other than see it. This is one of the greatest episodes of the entire series, and skipping this episode is a huge mistake. You get so much Vulcan lore here, and the added attraction of Kirk versus Spock. For years, I've called this one Spock Gets Horny, as I know Matt McGonigal has as well. But this is must-see Star Trek.
Absolutely.
Nimoy really is just exceptional in this episode. And I understand his blood fever, because that's how I feel when I want to kill you sometimes.
Well, sometimes we get to see. I love dead Kirk when he's just kind of hanging by the sash on his neck. That's cool. We get to see the great emotional response of Spock when Kirk is alive in sickbay. It's a great episode. I love it.
Plus, as Helen points out, the iconic fight music. Absolutely. I mean, all right, stop it. Sorry. Spotify is going to get on our case.
That's true.
And shifty-eyed Stan. Poor Stan. I mean, he lucks out by default, but T'Pring really just is like, I'm going to take the first warm body. Here's Stan. And I get all his land.
He looks like such a fun guy.
Land. I know, right? He must be fun at Vulcan parties. Dan, our respondents on the Patreonicals and the Camp Kittimers gave Amok Time a 100% see it rating. Rare in see it or skip it, but here it is to start us off.
As they should have. That's a great. So we are in full agreement, and I would got to think that Brian's got a big see it on this one as well. So yeah, absolutely great kickoff to a season. Star Trek classic. What's not to love about it?
That's it. Why don't we move on to episode 2, which of course is the classic Who Mourns for Adonai? Yeah. The Enterprise is held captive within an energy field, which is controlled by an alien who claims to be the Greek god Apollo. Yeah. Why don't I go first here? Because this one for me, Dan.
Bad feeling about this.
Yeah. Meh.
Oh, that didn't take long.
I'm getting that out of the way early.
Wow.
This episode is dull. Oh, look, it's another godlike figure that is imposing his will on the crew, but it's really some fancy technology that Kirk can either destroy or talk to death. I repeat, meh.
Wow.
That's sorry. I mean, it didn't take me long.
It really didn't. That's very surprising for this episode too. I felt sure you would have given this one a see it. I know I did. I definitely gave it a see it. I love this episode. I've always loved this episode.
Really?
I loved how I love how the writers took Greek mythology and gave it a science fiction spin that I actually love. I actually like how they did that. I like Scotty in this. I love the green hand. I now have a Christmas ornament with the green hand on the Enterprise, which I love.
Your face is a green hand.
I like that too. But I love Michael Forrest in this. Michael Forrest as Apollo is great. I really like him in this. I like him in Gilligan's Island. He's just in a lot of good stuff. And I'm sad that you gave it a skip it, but that's okay because everybody's favorite is somebody's least favorite.
I will say that Michael Forrest is, of course, fantastic in this episode. I'm sorry, Dan, what did you call him in Vegas accidentally one time?
Michael Ansara.
Yeah. So we're going up to his table and we're getting introduced to him by Casey Shafsky. And Dan's like, Mr. Ansara, I loved you in your episode. It was fantastic. And it took him about a good 30 seconds to realize it wasn't Michael Ansara. But Michael Forrest just kind of rolled with it.
He rolled with it, but I felt like the biggest dipshit. Speaking of dipshits.
Hey, that's no way to talk to our amazing guest.
I was going to say something about you, Bill.
Hi, Brian. Oh, you can't. Oh.
At least he's here. Oh, there he goes. Bye.
And it kicked him out again. So we saw Brian for a half a second.
We did.
It looks fantastic, doesn't
It
he?
looks pretty awesome. Absolutely. Yeah,
I know.
absolutely. Huh.
Dan, would you be surprised to learn that from respondents in the poll, Who Mourns from Adonai received a 62.5% see it?
So it's a majority, not a super majority.
No, it's by far a majority, almost 2/3.
2/3, yeah, 2/3, yeah.
Almost 2 out of 3.
Mm-hmm. I like it. I've always loved it. It's I love that he can either destroy it or talk it to death. That was pretty good. I did like that.
Because that's what Kirk does with all computers.
That's just yes, he does. And I will say this: it's always going to be a C for me, but it's another. Oh, look, the planet's being controlled by a computer.
Yeah, or there's a godlike being,
yeah,
which we've talked about with Haley before.
Yep, but he is a god, right?
Yeah. Well, no, not if he's relies on a computer to give him his power.
Well, that's true.
Dan, let's take a quick pause here. Do you want to message Brian and tell him that we'll work something out for the next See It or Skip It?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm sure he's frustrated and he's
Yeah.
getting ready to go on a vacation. So
Yep.
let's do that, and we'll just do this one ourselves tonight.
All right, I can do that.
Sorry for the break in the action, everybody, but you're really getting to see behind the curtain tonight. And tell him, obviously, we appreciate him and we love him, and we'll find a way to do it for next time.
Absolutely.
Even if we have to Zoom it or whatever.
Excellent. We're good. Sent.
Okay.
All right.
Should we pick up with well, I'll create an intro here for episode 3, and that'll be my edit point.
Yes.
Does that work for you?
That's good. Good.
Okay. And so, Dan, we're going to move on now to season 2, episode 3. And that is, of course, The Changeling.
I am Nomad.
Oh, you are bad, is what you are. The crew of the Enterprise deals with Nomad, an indestructible planet-destroying space probe that thinks Kirk is its creator. I guess this is it's back to you on this one, buddy.
Yeah, I gave this a see it, but I will say this may be, or this is my first barely see it of the season.
Really?
I understand that Nomad is a Star Trek legend. The storyline is pretty good, and what happens to Uhura is really devastating, but I just was never okay with how blank she was at one point. But by next week, she's back at her station. Nothing happened. She's, super smart Uhura. Everything's great. I just, and it's not an episode that's like sitting on the edge of my seat watching type thing. But I did give it a see it.
Well, the thing is, though, with TOS, you almost really can't, really count it against that, because all TV was episodic back then. There was really no serialized TV other than soap operas.
I understand that, but I mean, it was a little insulting too, because at one point, she's completely wiped clean, and then like they're trying to get her to read a couple sentences, and when she finally gets like the word ball, like it's like they're throwing a party and it's all exciting, and I just felt bad for Aurora. I just did.
Well, and I can appreciate that. I mean, because I think that's what they want you to feel in the scene, right?
Yeah.
I called this a see it. What's that?
Nothing.
What'd you say?
I said it's like what I'm listening to you all the time, but that's okay.
Just shut up. See, the isolinear chips don't lie.
They don't.
I literally have always loved this episode. And you know what? Everybody points this out to me when I start talking about this episode. I don't care that Star Trek the Motion Picture rips this episode off. I think that The Changeling is an entertaining and well-told story. I think it gives Kirk a real quandary. Yes, it's a little Charlie X-ish in a sense, where Kirk kind of has to be, the parental figure, for want of a better word, whether it's, the male authority figure or the creator. But I love that robot, man. When I was like 7 years old watching this episode, I'm like, whoa, that's cool. He made an entire wall disappear. And so I'm always going to say see it to this episode. In fact, if I have a hankering to watch TOS, I almost always start with the Changeling. I don't know why.
Really?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I do love how in the very first scene of Lower Decks, there was a nomad hidden in the storage closet.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. That was pretty awesome.
I want a nomad. Like that is like I would love a constructed nomad that actually has sound and lights. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So Dan, our campers and our Patreonicals gave the Changeling an 87.5 see it rating.
That's big.
Only 12.5%. Was that 1/8 of respondents? 1 out of 8 said they would skip it.
Best idea. I have no idea.
That's because we go back to Matt McGonigal's comment, and that is math is hard.
Yeah. No, that's it's surprising, but not. That's a little higher than I thought it would be. But that's probably my own bias because I barely gave it a see it. So
no, and I get that. So of course, Dan, now this means we are going to move on to episode 4. And that is Mirror, Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
The one that starts the trope that people with facial hair are bad. Although, wait a second, you and I both have facial hair.
All right.
Well, mine's we're bad. We're bad in a good way.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Let me read the log line, of course. Not that anyone really needs me to, but a transporter mishap slips Captain Kirk and his companions into a parallel universe where the Enterprise serves a barbaric empire instead of the United Federation of Planets. You know what I'm going to do, Dan? I'm actually going to take this one first because I know you're just going to be heaping praise on it. Okay. Oh. And I don't want to undercut your praise. I want that to be kind of what resonates for this episode because I know you're a big Mirror Universe dork. That's hashtag Mirror Universe dork for those of you at home. It obviously is a see it for me, and it only because it is the very first Mirror Universe episode, and honestly, that's about it. I am so tired of the Mirror Universe after 50 years. It's been done to death, and at times it even makes me tired of Mirror, Mirror. Sometimes it's hard to look at this episode in a bubble because it has spawned so many other Mirror Universe episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's Nichelle. And I figure that's really all I have to say about that.
Okay, Forrest. I like that.
Thank you.
And I will say I like how they try to mirror that look with T'Pol in the Mirror Universe episode of Enterprise, but that's neither here nor there. Of course, to see it for me, it's a no-brainer. You know how I feel. Everybody knows how I feel about the Mirror Universe, although it has waned over the past couple of years, my love and admiration for it. But this does set the tone for great things that do take place from time to time in the Star Trek universe. I love Spock with a beard. Always have. I love the shinier uniform that he's wearing. I love the Agony booth. What I wouldn't give for an Agony booth specifically built for Bill. I just would be you want a Nomad. I want a Bill Agony booth. That's all I want. This episode is also the centerpiece for the Star Trek Hallmark ornament storytelling set that came out a few years ago, which is fantastic. You can pretty much get the entire episode on your Christmas tree. It's awesome. What's not to love about this episode? I love it.
Dan, the respondents in our episode poll this time agree with you. 94% of respondents said they would see this episode. And I mean, rightfully so. It's a great story. Kirk has one of the best Kirk monologues ever at the end. But if you can set it aside from all of the other, crap episodes for the Mirror Universe, of which there are only a couple that are super great, then so be it.
And this first episode, of course, is what starts it all off in my all-time favorite novel by David Mack. Is based on the Mirror Universe when Spock becomes Emperor.
Yep.
So and I'd recommend that book to anybody on the planet to read. But yeah, I'll always love Mirror, Mirror, even though they did start getting kind of crazy with some of the stuff they did later in the Mirror Universe. This one's always there for me.
Is that Sorrows of the Empire? Sorrows of the Empire?
Sorrows of Empire. Sorrows of Empire. Yep.
Yeah.
By David Mack.
You had me read that once when I was going on vacation, and I was on a cruise, and I read that book really in about 2 days, and it was fantastic.
Yeah,
I recommend it too
fantastic.
for once because I actually read a book.
Yeah.
So,
congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dan. This, of course, means we move on to episode 5, and that is the manzana.
The bad apple.
Oh no, that's just Spanish for apple. I've been using Duolingo. Can you tell?
There you go.
The apple. Yeah, the crew of the Enterprise visits a mysterious and deadly paradise planet, which they discover is controlled by a machine named Vol. Dan, let's let you go first, buddy.
Okay. Didn't take long for my first skip it. I mean, you were right there in episode 2, but yeah, this is a skip it for me. I have never connected with this episode. It's just another, we talked about this already. It's another civilization is ruled by a computer scenario. Yawn. David Soul. Yawn. Spock struck by lightning is kind of cool, but the cool looking Val visual of the dragon head just does not sway this to me to be a see it. It never has been. Some guy gets hit by electrocuted and disintegrates. That's kind of cool too. But yeah, no, it's a skip it for me, buddy.
And rocks that are landmines. Don't forget that.
That's true. Yes. Cool. On the soft, nice fake turf.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That fake astroturf. It's amazing. Believe it or not, this is also a skip it for me. There is not enough there with this episode. Vol isn't interesting, and the danger just really doesn't seem all that dangerous or believable. Plus, I mean, let's be honest, Kirk ruins this civilization.
Yeah.
All because it doesn't do what he thinks they should do. Oh, and they introduce sex. Yeah, I see that that's just gonna make everything a lot easier, right?
And you also learn how to smash somebody's skull in with a big weapon. That's always good too.
These people were doing fine before us. The landing party should have just left the hell alone and beamed out after the first person was injured.
Yep. Got it.
I get it. There's no story that way, but yeah, definite skip it for me. Dan, do you want to take a guess at how many people said they would skip this episode, or what percentage of people would skip this episode?
I'm going with at least 2/3. I'm thinking this is not a popular episode, so I'm going to go with at 66% said skip it.
You're close. It's 3 out of 4. 75% of respondents said they would skip the apple, and I certainly can't blame them.
Yeah.
Now I do like David Soul. I'm a big Starsky and Hutch fan, a big Magnum Force fan, Dirty Harry, but this is just putrid.
Yeah. No, thanks. Bye.
Like your face.
Yes, my face is stupid.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you say that again?
I don't remember what I said.
You're full of crap. Of course, Dan, that takes us to episode 6, The Doomsday Machine. After losing his entire crew to a planet-eating alien machine from another galaxy, Commodore Matt Decker pulls rank on Kirk in order to play a game of cat and mouse with a mechanical adversary. So that's some website's words and not mine.
Right.
I will go first this time. Absolutely, no doubt. This is a see it. This is one of Trek's best episodes, period. And I really think that's all I need to say.
Yeah, that's pretty much right. Don't you think I know that? It is one of the best. Quite, as I said, pretty much right in line with you, quite possibly the best episode of the season, and it's one of the best of the entire series. It's an incredible story. It's got great drama, awesome acting, especially by guest star William Wyndham as Commodore Decker. This is a must-see Star Trek, no matter which series you love the most. If you love Lower Decks more than anything, you still have got to watch Doomsday Machine.
Oh, you absolutely do.
Yep.
I still love to watch I love the remastered one simply because it feels more cinematic. But I also love the original one because of the way that model of the constellation looks. It's so obvious that it's a model, dude. And I love it to death. I really do.
Absolutely. Yep. No, it's great. And you get this is the example that I use for how great they did with the remastering of Star Trek.
Yeah.
This
No,
episode. Yep.
I'm right there with you. So,
Yep.
Dan, we have our second 100% in the
What?
poll. 100% of respondents said they would see this episode. And I mean, that's just the right answer. I've been thinking about this, Helen. Helen says I'd like to see a younger Decker in Strange New Worlds. I would too, quite honestly.
Yep.
I'd love to see him be the captain of another ship before he gets promoted to Commodore, perhaps.
Right.
But I would love that. I think that would be amazing.
I think Helen should get on that.
What are you talking about, dude?
I don't know. She's so smart. She's smarter than two of us.
That's absolutely true. They are. Dan, this brings us to episode 7, Cat's Paw, the Star Trek Halloween episode spectacular. Witches, ghosts, pointed-eared hobgoblins, oh my. 2 powerful aliens threaten the well-being of the Enterprise and her crew with their magical powers. No? I thought I'd editorialize there. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to go first on this one.
Yeah. I know what this is for you.
This is an absolute skip it for me. This episode sucks, and I've never been able to stay awake through it. The whole thing with the giant cat is completely unbelievable, and it was dumb to do a Halloween episode in the first place. Dumber, in fact, than Dan's face. Boom.
Bang. Threw your face in there. Wow. Well, not your face, but close enough. Wow. Thanks.
Yeah.
This might surprise some people, but I actually give this one a see it because for the reason that you don't like it. They did a Halloween episode in Star Trek. That's just crazy, but crazy enough for me that I liked aspects of it. There's witches, there's black cats, there's wizards, there's curses. It's goofy. And the worst special effect of any Star Trek series ever with the pipe cleaner aliens on strings just makes it fun for me. So if anything, I give it a see it because for me, it's just fun and not serious. Even though I do agree the shadow of the cat is just ridiculous. It's not realistic at all. Putting the Enterprise on a little block of acrylic, I like it. It's fun.
Helen, I have to agree with you. It's a skip it. I try to watch it and I fall asleep every time. It's almost like the Lights of Zatar. I fall asleep during that one too. Spoiler alert. I guess when we do TOS season 3, I guess we know what the skip it'll be. And the meh. Dan, this is perhaps a controversial episode in the poll.
Yeah.
50% down the middle. See it and
Right
skip
down.
it. Right down the middle.
Yep.
I'm actually surprised by that. Usually, campers and Patreonicals are a little more forgiving in the poll than we are necessarily. They usually vote to see it more often than we do historically. And to see that split down the middle really is kind of surprising to me.
It is. But I think it's good that there's more people. I did not think that it would be that high. 50% is not high, but that's higher than I thought it would be. I also like the fact that in my first STLV ever, I met Starfleet Mom for the first time, and she was cosplaying as Sylvia.
Right.
And it was a fantastic cosplay. I cannot remember who was playing Korob, but Korob was there too. And I have a great picture of all of us together. And I've always always appreciated that first time I met her. It was a great cosplay.
Oh, absolutely. I can't skip that episode fast enough. But let's of course move on to an episode that I'm sure is much better, Dan. And that is episode 8, I Mud. Captain Kirk and the crew have a second run-in with the con man Harry Mudd, this time finding him as the king of a planet of androids. Just examine that sentence for a minute. King of a planet of androids, Dan.
Yeah.
And why don't you take this one first?
Skip it. I'm sorry. I have never liked Harry Mudd. I never will like Harry Mudd, from TOS to TAS to Discovery to Short Treks. No matter what, I don't care how awesome Rainn Wilson is. I just don't like the character of Harry Mudd, and this does nothing to change that opinion for me. The only highlight, maybe Norman. He smokes, or is it him? If somebody starts smoking in at the end of the episode, I don't even know if it's him now because I don't care. But yeah, it's a skip it. Bye. Done.
Oh goodness, you're killing me. This absolutely is a skip it for me. There aren't enough horrible things that I can say about this episode. It's not just awful. It's embarrassing, quite frankly. I remember seeing it as a kid and hating it then. And you know what? It hasn't gotten any better. That bit at the end where they're doing all the pantomimes and trying to drive the androids crazy. I hate that more than I hate your face, quite frankly.
Wow.
Or, where Chekhov is jumping up and down, the one that's become that GIF online.
Yep.
Or when Scotty and McCoy are pretending to play the music while Uhura and Chekhov are I'm like, I'm done.
With bad camera work?
I'm okay with the camera work. I just think the script is horrible. I was okay with Harry Mudd the first time because he seemed like a really bad guy. In this, he just seems like a moron. So other than that, I don't really have any strong feelings. So
I have a feeling
that
we're gonna get put in our place.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. People like Harry Mudd. I don't think that. I think we're in the minority of throwing mud in the mud. But
throwing mud on mud. I do want to say I actually really like Rainn Wilson as Harry Mudd. I think I like him better than Roger Carmel. But 75% of respondents, Dan, said they would see this episode.
Boom.
3 out of 4.
Yeah. Speaking of Mr. Carmel, he was on an episode of Three's Company I watched the other day. He's everywhere. About that?
Well, not anymore.
Anyway, well, that's true. Yeah, that I know, like I said, a lot of people like Harry Mudd, so this doesn't surprise me. But 75% of people saying see this, that's just not right. That's bad.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, everybody likes what they like, right? So
that's true.
I mean, there's only so much grief that we can give people. Because I mean, I'm sure we say see it to things that other people are like, what are you talking about?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Like perhaps our next episode, Dan. The misspelled metamorphosis.
I did that on purpose. I wanted to see if you would do it. Oh my God, that's so good. Thank you.
Well, I also corrected it in the spreadsheet.
Well, I just did a copy and paste from the spreadsheet anyway. So
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So,
thank you for that.
Yeah, that's actually it's really hard to read that way.
It is. Yeah, I won't do that again.
And I noticed how you've got a capital A, capital S, capital I, capital S.
That's because
the ACES is capitals, but this down here is lowercase.
You got to do it when I'm doing in between stuff at work. Stuff gets by me. Sorry.
This is not going to look good on your next performance for you. I just want you to know that.
That's all right.
Metamorphosis: a shuttle crew from the Enterprise encounters a castaway who appears to be Zephram Cochrane, the inventor of warp drive, and his mysterious alien companion.
Uh-huh.
Why don't I take this one first?
Okay.
I actually have always really enjoyed this story. This for me is a see it, even if it involves a really troublesome relationship. And looking back at this, I feel the same way about this episode that I do about like Wonder Woman 1984, where essentially another being is taken over by something else for a love story. And the other person really has no free will in the decision. I think that's really what is troublesome to me. That said, I mean, in the end, whom among us can survive without love of some kind? And so I guess I understand why this episode turns out the way it does. So this one for me, Dan, is a see it. Like I said, I enjoy it for weird reasons, but they're my reasons.
Okay. No, that's fine. I actually gave it a see it as well. This is one of the ones of the season where I really had to sit and think about it for a while. And I ended up just going barely with see it. If anything, it gives us the first glimpse, although kind of a weak one, into the father of the warp drive, Zephram Cochrane. Of course, it takes on a whole nother meaning in First Contact. I have never liked the Nancy Hedford character at all. I'm sorry that she's sick, but she's a pain in the ass. And the whole creepy companion thing, just ew. Nope. Sorry. It's but I still gave it a see it because there are aspects, and I think what you said is the key. You're alone. This guy's alone. He needs a companion. And so yeah, so I give it a see it for that reason, but it was a barely see it for me.
Well, he figures he has a companion. He just has no idea that the companion is in love with him.
Right. And then he gets all upset about it.
And then it takes over Commissioner Hedford's body. By the way, Eleanor Donahue, TV icon in an episode of Star Trek, is fantastic. And by the way, Glenn Corbett as Zephram Cochrane. He's the father of Laurie Holden from The Walking Dead, by the way.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's a little trivia for you there.
All right.
This is the second episode in a row where respondents in the poll said 75% of them would see this episode.
Huh. Well, all right.
Here's what I want to know. I'm going to go back to the still image for a second. Why is Kirk holding a hair trimmer? I mean, it doesn't look like a universal translator. It looks like he's about to give Spock a crew cut.
It does. I like that. You and your wit. And
what is this stuff on Cochrane's?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
This looks almost like something you'd see on the wall of the Enterprise. But this stuff makes no sense at all. It's like, all right, let's just glue these here.
Have we ever seen a Zephram Cochrane from this episode cosplay? I don't think we have. That's a good picture to do it with. I know what I'm doing in Vegas.
Don't forget this one on the cuff.
Nobody's going to know what it is.
Who knows what the hell that is?
Jeez. That's funny.
Yeah. I thought so too. So yeah, 75% of respondents in Camp Kittimer said that they would watch this episode.
Yep.
You know what's not surprising, Dan?
My face.
No, I get shocked by that every day. But the next episode, Journey to Babel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those two pig guys on the right kind of look like you a little bit if you squint.
Wow. Okay. Let's see.
I mean, they've got more hair. This guy's hair clearly doesn't match his beard.
Well, that
must have been a budget day. And this guy in the cloak in the background, I don't know what planet he's from, but clearly they're just trying to hide the fact he's got no makeup on.
That's probably true. Yes. And then you get the cubed food. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know what the hell Sarek is wearing.
I love it.
But I think it's awesome. I wish somebody would do this cosplay.
Yep. Get on that too.
So anyway, Journey to Babel is season 2, episode 10. While transporting dignitaries to an important peace conference on the planet Babel, the Enterprise is pursued by a mysterious vessel. And after a quarrel between the Vulcan ambassador, Sarek, by the way, he's Spock's father, and the Tellarite ambassador, the latter is killed with Sarek as the main suspect.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dan, I'll let you go first with your see it or skip it.
I think this is the easiest see it of maybe the season. Maybe Doomsday Machine, just right up there. It's a Trek classic. We get to meet the folks. We have Tellarites. We have Andorians. We have cubed food. And hey, what do you know? McCoy finally gets the last word. So what's not to love about it?
Yeah, sure he does.
He actually says it.
I know. Of course he does, dummy. I know he does, but like he's ever going to really get the last word. Come on. Yeah. With Kirk or Spock. This for me is an absolute see it. I mean, the Sarek and Spock dynamic alone is worth the price of admission. Plus, I love the reaction that everybody has when Spock's like, "Oh yeah, that's my father." Like, you couldn't have told us this before, buddy.
Nobody looked at your records, your personnel file.
Yeah, it's like he's the first Vulcan in Starfleet. You guys couldn't read his jacket. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I guess I'm surprised. It starts the theme of Spock only revealing what's necessary. Right. I mean, we encounter this again in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, and then of course again in Star Trek Discovery and all that other stuff. So yeah. Dan, would you like to hazard a guess as to how many respondents said yes, they would see this episode as a percentage?
Based on the other must-sees of this season, it's got to be 100% because Doomsday Machine, Journey to Babel, and Amok Time are the 3 you cannot miss these episodes ever. So I'm going with 100%.
You are correct, sir. This is the 3rd full vote for the episode.
Huge.
That is huge. We rarely get that.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely 100% respondents would say see it for this particular episode, and I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But we're cooking right along, so let's continue.
Boom. Yeah.
With episode 11, and of course that's Friday's Child. Man. What am I, a doctor or a moon shuttle conductor? The crew of the Enterprise become entangled in a planet's tribal power struggle. To make matters worse, the Klingons show up and cause additional problems for the crew. And I say additional because that's what the copy is. I'm pulling a Ron Burgundy there.
Yeah, that's all right.
Why don't I go first on this one?
Yeah.
This one for me, just barely, is a see it, and I'll tell you why. 2 words, Julie Newmar. I think that she's a wonderful addition to this episode. She's entertaining enough here, and her comedic beats accentuate the drama very nicely.
Mm-hmm.
I think if anyone else were cast in this role, it might be a skip it for me, but I think that she's the perfect casting here in this part, and she's really the one who pushes it over the fence for me.
All right, that's cool. I gave it a see it as well. For me, this is one of 2 episodes this season where basically the crew is running around hills and mountains throwing shit at each other, which I don't love. And this is the better of the 2, though. It gets barely a see it because of those cool throwing star weapons. Those are pretty awesome. Aline gets put in, replaced by McCoy, which is pretty awesome. And for those of you who don't do the Star Trek novels, which I know there's a lot, but the baby grows up to be an extremely important character in the Star Trek novel universe.
He does.
He is the security chief on Sulu's Excelsior, and then he is Admiral Leonard James Akar in several Deep Space Nine novels, which are all excellent stories. So yeah,
the commander-in-chief of Starfleet at one point.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. Yeah. Great character. And I gave this one a see it. Yeah.
That's fantastic. You were not alone in that effort, Dan. Just over 2/3 of respondents, 68.8% of people in the poll said they would also see this episode. It's one I love. What can I say?
Yeah,
but just a little
bit. That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Let us move on to the halfway point in season 2, and that is, of course. Oh, no, wait. I'm sorry. Not the halfway point. The one before the halfway point. I got ahead of myself. And that is season 2, episode 12, The Deadly Years. Strange radiation exposes the command crew of the Enterprise to the effects of rapid aging. The aging inhibits the decision-making abilities of Captain Kirk and Spock, causing a hot-headed Commodore to take command to end the What does that say?
Causing a hot copy and paste, baby.
Headed Commodore to take command and enter the Romulan neutral zone. Yeah. It says "and" instead of "and." That's not your mistake. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Dan, why don't we let you take this one first, buddy?
This will always be a see it for me. I love this episode. I have always loved it. It's one of my favorites. I love the transformation of each character as they age, because there's actually humor in the sadness of what's happening, if that makes any sense at all. Chekhov's reactions to the testing are great. I love the makeup to a point. When they're starting to age, where Kirk's hair is slicked back more and he's got some whites, stuff like that, and little crow's feet, like it. At the end, the makeup is not awesome. For the time that they did this, it's okay, except for the woman who dies against the wall. That makeup is just awful, awful, awful. And it's another dumb Commodore thinking he knows everything. It's a fantastic episode. I love it. I'll always watch it if I come across it, if it's on.
The dude in this episode is an idiot too.
Yeah. And it's Officer Kirk from Happy Days, if anybody remembers the Happy Days series. No, sorry, wrong guy.
Yeah, wrong guy. Officer Kirk from
Wrong
Happy
episode.
Days is actually in the season finale.
Yes, he is. That's what I was thinking.
And I wonder if he was named Kirk because of that, but that's just me. This episode for me, I went back and forth on this for a long time because I don't like this episode. I don't think it's particularly good. I think the makeup is terrible. And I think that some of the characters become caricatures, like, say, McCoy, who forgets he's in Starfleet and then becomes some old racist country doctor. He looks like he ought to be, carrying signs, if you know what I mean. So I am going to call it a see it, but the only reason I say this is a see it is for Shatner. I think that he does a great job of dealing with the question, how does a starship captain deal with aging? And I think that's really an interesting topic. We see it explored later on in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and in 3 and 4 as, they're getting older, and even in Star Trek 6. But I think it's interesting for Kirk to come to this point at this phase in his life where he's the youngest captain in Starfleet and all of that. So it's William Shatner alone that pushes this into see it territory. Otherwise, I think this episode is terrible.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I have a question, and I'm not gonna paint too many words around this, but I'm like, what is this thing filled with aluminum foil?
I don't have any idea. Of course, I didn't think anything of it when I was getting the stills for the PowerPoint. But as soon as you said I got a question and brought that up, I was like, oh no.
For those of you listening to the audio version, it's a scene in sick bay where there's this somewhat phallic looking object stuffed with Reynolds wrap. And I don't know what is it supposed to be sciencey because it's got tinfoil jammed in there? I don't really know.
All right. Yep. Some probing.
Yeah, it's gonna probe something. That's all right. Dan, the Deadly Years respondents, 75% of people said they would see this episode, which of course means 25% would skip it. And man, I understand.
Wow. Yeah. Well, yeah. That's okay. That's all right. It is interesting to me though that an aged Kirk in this episode, and then you look at aged Kirk at what, 60, 70 in that episode, and now look at William Shatner at 90 plus. You don't look that old.
Well, he's also got a better toupee maker now.
Yeah.
Did I say that out loud?
Ouch.
Oh,
I think you did.
Oh, I'm terrible.
Terrible, man. Just terrible.
Just terrible.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, now we're at the halfway point, season 2, episode 13. And that is, of course, Obsession. And I don't mean the Calvin Klein version.
Oh.
Captain Kirk becomes obsessed with destroying a murderous entity that killed many of the crew of his old ship. Yeah. Why don't I take this one first? This for me is a skip it, believe it or not. And that's because I think this episode goes against who Kirk is to some degree. I've never been comfortable with Kirk having this obsession to the point where it endangers his current crew multiple times. And honestly, I don't think that's in his character at this point. I think this episode could have easily dropped that element and been decent and probably not called obsession. But I really think that Kirk is being painted with a brush that Kirk shouldn't be painted with here, but that's just me. But yeah, definite skip it for me, Dan.
Let me ask you this before I get to my my choice, because I'm curious.
Yeah.
Do you give that same clarification or characterization to Cisco's obsession with Eddington when he destroys a planet trying to chase him down?
I do. Yeah, because I understand why Cisco is obsessed with getting oh god, his name just escaped me. Eddington. But I have a hard time believing that Benjamin Sisko would poison a water supply on a planet and make it uninhabitable for humans just to flesh out the Maquis.
Yeah.
Could I believe he'd do it as a tactic? Yes. Only humans would be affected, but still I have a hard time believing that the Benjamin Sisko we know would do that. So yeah, I give the same critique to both captains, honestly.
Okay.
Or
I was
to
just
the
curious.
writing of both captains. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I gave this one a see it. For me, I like seeing this part of Kirk that we shouldn't be seeing. It's a great dive into what can drive him, even when it's not a good thing. He does a great job showing this obsession, Shatner, and how it can cloud his judgment, especially with what you were just talking about. I love the backstory of what happened when he was a junior officer. And for some reason, for decades now, I have always thought that Garivik reminds me of what a Riker of that time frame would be like.
Interesting.
I've always connected Garivik with Riker for some reason, and I don't know why. But yeah, I gave it a see it. I enjoy the episode. Yeah. Yep.
Interesting that you connect the two of them. I guess I didn't see that before, and now I might have to rewatch that and kind of get a sense of it. But okay, I'll take that under advisement. Dan, this is the second episode this season where poll respondents said 50-50, see it or skip it.
Exactly. Right down the mid.
Literally right down the middle, 50.0 both times. That also does not happen often, by the way.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And it's interesting to see when something doesn't, the numbers don't look at what you think they're going to be. I thought that this would be a more see it than skip it, but it's right down the century.
It's what?
Right down the century.
No, the sound effect I was going for.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, on to the next episode. That is season 2, episode 14. We're in the back 9 now, or the back 13, I suppose. And that is Wolf in the Fold. On the planet Argelius, during a plan to break, Scotty, Kirk, and Bones encounter a series of events where Scotty is blamed for murdering 3 women, 2 local to the planet, and 1 crew member aboard the Enterprise. It turns out that Scotty is not the criminal, but a mysterious alien that is known by many names, including Dan Davis, Jack the Ripper.
Well done.
Wow.
Well done.
I don't know why that's in the log lines for that episode. We should really contact that site and get that taken down.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm gonna have you go first on this one.
Okay.
Dan Davidson, what say you, see it or skip it?
I have always loved this episode. I'm going to give this one a see it. In my opinion, it's the best Scotty episode of the series that focuses in specifically on him. There are other episodes where he has a love interest and blah, 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 but this is a Scotty episode. I do love the story. I love the suspense. I love the Jack the Ripper aspect, and gives another example of Star Trek turning something science fiction-y in a way that I really like and has a good twist. John Fiedler, also known as Piglet, is so great as Hengist, and Prefect Jarrus has one of the best lines that Dan could ever want to say to Bill when he goes, no, kill you all, die, make you suffer. That's what I want to say to Bill just about every single day. And we get to see it in a Star Trek episode whenever we want to. So it's a see it for me, Bill. Back to the studio.
This got dark. This really got dark. Wow.
Before you start, can you pull up Helen's message? Because they're absolutely correct. And that's not something I thought of when I was talking about this. That's a shitty way to do an episode right there. That's terrible. And you're absolutely right, Helen, but I still see it.
That's because you suck, and Helen and I are smart, even though I'm sure Helen and I would both watch this on a rewatch. But Dan, I'm going to come down on the side of skip it for Wolf in the Fold. Ooh. This episode has always annoyed the hell out of me. I hate the concept. I hate Jack the Ripper. I hate the fact now that Piglet is forever unclean now that he's a murderer. And I hate that no one can clap on this stupid ass planet. I hate that apparently I'm not done. I hate that apparently belly dancing is the only entertainment in the galaxy. This episode sucks more than you do. And other than that, I really am okay with it.
I will say one thing. It's really creepy at the very beginning of this episode when it's going to close up of the dancer. Her eyes freak me out. They were like really like weird. But
that's the thing that bothers you about this episode. That's
the lights and the lights in Argelius. That's kind of funny too. Yes. Yeah.
That is, Scotty doesn't know how to applaud either. He's like hitting the table like blah, blah, blah. And Helen brings up 2 great points. I'm with Bill. This episode sucks. Helen, you were always my favorite. And then I hate the seance. Yes, 1,000 times. Every show with a period was doing a seance episode because those were trendy. Wild Wild West does one. So many shows. And I think even Batman 66 does one at one point. I could be wrong about that. Yeah.
That's blue.
But this whole seance idea, absolutely stupid. This is a putrid episode. I would skip it. That's really all I want to say.
Oh. I don't know if I'd go so far to call it putrid. That's interesting, but hey, that's okay. That's no problem. I'm kind of having a feeling that people are going to be on my side though, from the Camp Kittimerites and the Patrioticals.
You're probably right. 62.5%. So not the highest rating, but not the lowest by far. 62.5% said they would see this episode. That's a respectable rating. That's almost 3 out of 4. No, it's not. It's almost 3 out of 5.
Yeah, 3 out of 5. Yep.
Ellen watched it a few nights ago and said, "Skip it." Ross has got a jet. See you later, buddy. Thank you for being here.
Oh man, wow, thanks. Bye, Ross.
And he was the reason why we were doing this. So I guess we're not doing it anymore.
Okay, see ya.
No, I kid. Let's move on to episode 15. And hey, look at that. I like this. This is much better. The Trouble with Tribbles. See, I totally boxed you out there, Dan. Isn't that great?
You did. It's like you're like a good basketball player or something.
Let's do it again. The Trouble with Tribbles. Tribbles, purring, fluffy, and fertile creatures disrupt the exploration of a disputed planet between the Klingon Empire and the Federation. The logline says exploitation, and that might actually be true.
Yeah, I think it's exploitation. Yeah, that's what because I did reread it when I was putting it in there. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
Anyway,
Sherman's Planet.
Dan Davidson, see it or skip it?
This is a see it for me. But in my opinion, I don't think you're going to get a lot of these, but you either love it, which a lot of people do, or you hate it. There's no in between, I don't think, for Trouble with Tribbles. My mom hated this episode like you would not believe, and she always made sure she reminded me whenever the conversation came up. I love this episode. I love the humor. I love the fight scene. I love the bar scene. I love how Deep Space Nine made this story even better with trials and tribulations. And I love the fact that Bill, I just love the fact that Tribbles are not dangerous, my friend. They're not dangerous. I love Bill. Dangerous.
I'm going to kick you out of this meeting. I'm going to do the rest of the episode on my own. It'll be the best episode ever.
See it.
Yeah. I of course said see it. I really don't feel like I need to give a reason other than that. I mean, that's really it. It's one of the all-time classics of Star Trek. You should absolutely watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, guess what?
This is unreal.
100%.
4 times this season so far.
4 times in the season, 100%, almost unheard of, but that's how classic this episode is, and
amazing.
Honestly, who could blame it? So,
yep.
Dan, we move on now to an episode I know that you have a soft spot in your heart for, and that is, of course, the Gamesters of Triskelion.
Yes.
Captain Kirk, Chekhov, and Uhura are kidnapped by powerful disembodied aliens and forced to fight in gladiatorial contests. Say that 10 times fast. For the aliens' gambling entertainment. I'm going to go first, and I think I'm going to shock a lot of people on this one. And this one, for me, is a skip it. I know you're stunned. It's my first ever double meh.
Oh.
And I would like to say meh, just to make it official. This episode actually is not very good. It's a terrible concept. In addition to the fact that there's an assault of Uhura off screen.
That's true.
Plus, the brains are the dumbest thing ever. It doesn't look good. It's cobbled together. I don't think there's anything great about this episode at all. That's just the way I feel about it. I know you feel differently. But that's yep. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Jimmy Doohan does a great job playing all three of those brains, though.
He does.
And it's funny how that when they talk, they kind of like squeeze, which is something I'm really not sure. Brains don't do that when you talk, I don't think, but
maybe they do.
Maybe they do because they're triskelion brains. Yeah, I don't really even have to give a reason. But if you could pull that picture up again, Bill, from the PowerPoint, those are the two reasons why I love this episode so much. And I'm talking about both actors. Ruskin and Lady Gaga are so awesome in this episode that you just cannot get enough of it. I love Ruskin in this, as everyone knows, my love of Galt and my first cosplay. I just love what this character is like in this episode. He is the villain who doesn't want to be a villain. He is forced to do this just like all the other thralls are. And I think that's an interesting part of what makes this character so fascinating for me. I just love it. I think it's great. Is it the strongest episode? No, not at all. But it's a fun episode. There's some great visuals. There's some good dialogue. There's some funny stuff. Yeah, I love this episode. Always will. Absolutely.
My poker face. My poker face. Joseph Ruskin, amazingly trained actor. Angelique Pettyjohn, it's obvious that she's not.
That's right. They didn't hire her for her acting ability, I hate to say.
No, it was obviously for the wig. Dan, 81.3% of people in the poll said that they would see this episode. I'm not surprised by that. I don't know why this episode just doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't. So
love it. Love it.
So there we have it. Up next, Dan, one I know that you and I are both a big fan of. This may be spoiling it, but a piece of the action. Fantastic freaking episode. After receiving a 100-year late report from an old starship, Kirk, Bones, and Spock decide to beam down to the Iosian planet to learn about their way of life, and are surprised to find that the entire society is based on the 1920s era Chicago mob culture.
Boom.
Boom. Bada bing. Oh,
bing.
Look at that.
Oh, wrong episode.
Why don't I go first on this one? I'm going to say this is a see it. Absolutely. This episode is just fun. Everything from the fish out of water element to the very real threat posed by the mobsters. Then you get really a creative solution by Kirk, and it just makes for a legendary hour of television. Now, where did I put that communicator, Dan?
Yeah, that could have been a whole. I think they have actually written books about it, about what happened with that communicator being left behind. But yeah, I agree with you, man. It is such a fun episode. It's a see it for me. Great comedy. Now, this idea, unlike another episode later in the season, of a civilization building itself up based on a book from the past, actually makes sense, and I'm okay with how they do it here.
Okay.
I used to not like the scene with the kid, but now that I'm older, I have a whole new appreciation for it. Mel from Alice shows up as a mob boss, and he's fun, and Spock's trying to be a gangster, and that's just classic. And the creme de la creme, dude, is Fizbin. Even though Kirk does completely contradict himself with the rules. I'm okay with
it. Absolutely does.
It's awesome. I love it.
Yep. Check.
How lucky you are.
No. You're supposed to go, right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Jack. I didn't hear you. My apologies.
Because you're old and deaf. Dan, let's play a game, and it's called Guess the percentage of respondents that said they would see this episode.
I got to say it's at least 75%, if not higher.
It is higher.
I was going to say it's not 100 though, is it? Because if it's 100, I'm going to probably poop myself.
Let's not do that. It is higher. It's not 100. It's 87.5% said they would see this episode. It's a fantastic episode. I mean,
and they do look good in those suits. Absolutely.
They do look good in those suits.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What can I say? What can I say?
Piece of the action.
Piece. It's going to get a piece of honor action. And then I froze. For those of you in the audio.
Yes. Oh, Naked Gun move there.
Oh, I know, right? Loved that show. Anyway, Dan, episode 18. We're closing in on the back part of the season here, and the immunity syndrome. This is one of the great effect shots in all of Star Trek.
Yep.
Really the first 3 seasons. This looked good even in standard definition. That tells you how good this looked. The Enterprise receives orders to check on Starship Intrepid and Gamma 7 solar system, after which Spock senses the entire Vulcan crew has died. They find a black space covering the path to the system with no stars visible through it. Upon crossing into the space, the Enterprise begins to lose energy and is pulled toward a giant single-celled organism, massive in size. Dan, why don't you lead us off?
Funny how in this episode, they use miles for pretty much talking about the creatures and its size and everything, when everything else is kilometers and other type of measurements. So I've always found that quite funny. But this is a see it. I love this episode. As you just said, one of the best special effects of the entire series when they show that single-celled organism. I remember I used to be scared when I was a kid when they revealed that single-celled monster. When I was forced to watch the show before I really started enjoying it. I love the fact that most of the actors show that draining effect very well, like Kirk and McCoy, while others don't. Hello, bridge crew. They don't do a great job. Kirk's struggle with choosing who's going to sacrifice themselves is epic, as is the ultimate "shut up, Spock, we're rescuing you" line. Why, thank you, Captain McCoy. I think that's one of the ultimate examples of the back and forth by Bill and Dan. I mean, by Bones and Spock.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I have to agree with you. This is an absolute see it. I think this episode is exciting. Even seeing as a kid, to see what the Enterprise was up against was really kind of scary. I think this also is a great Suak story.
You're such an ass.
That's Dan's spelling, not mine, because Dan's the worst typist ever. And
worst typist ever.
Yeah, the dynamic between the big three in this episode is as good as it ever gets. I never tire of this episode. It's amazing. I don't know what else.
Such a jerk.
He did spell it in the notes, Suock.
Yeah.
So,
and I will say, from my own, everybody knows I spell like crap, and I'm not looking for excuses. But for some reason, whenever I'm working in Excel, spell check doesn't work. It never gives me the little red jiggly line. I don't know why. So that's why.
Maybe it's because Google Sheets is really more for numbers than anything else, but that's okay.
Probably. Anyway, that's all right. Still a see it.
It is still a see it. And in fact, Dan, the immunity syndrome, 68.8% of people taking the poll said they would see this episode. And I can't blame them. I don't know what the other 31.3% of people are watching, but it's time to make some different life decisions, people. Okay. But who am I to judge, honestly? Dan, let's move on to episode 19. Wait, before I do that, agree with Helen. It should be higher. It should be much higher. And I think when you see the rating for this next episode, Helen, I think you're going to wonder about the well-being of the people taking this poll.
Absolutely.
But episode 19, which is A Private Little War. I see the costume budget was really flexed for this one. Upon landing on the planet with a humanoid population, Kirk finds that half the population, led by his old friend Tyree, is still primitive, while the other half has firearms thanks to the interference from the Klingons. And Magatos, or Gamatos, or Mugatus, or whatever you want to call it. So Dan, we lead off with you, my friend.
This is a skip it for me. Remember before when I said there were 2 episodes a season where they were throwing shit around, running around the hills? This is number 2.
It's number 2.
Don't like this episode. I've never liked it, not even a little bit. The Mugato can't save it. Nona's leather pants and orange bikini top can't save it. Chaplain Mabega slapping the shit out of Spock could save it, but it doesn't. And Kirk just throws the Prime Directive out the window again. So this is a skip it for me.
Nona could save this episode, but that's 13-year-old me talking. This also is a skip it for me. The only downside to skipping this episode, if there is one, is that you won't know what a Magato is in Lower Decks by the time you get there. But I think you should take that chance, honestly.
Yes. Yeah.
I think you're fine to just go ahead and just, skip this one on Netflix or Paramount Plus or, your own DVD collection because really you're okay without it.
Yeah.
Dan, would you like to guess what the percentage is of people saying they would see a private little war?
It better not be higher than the immunity syndrome because I was disappointed at the immunity syndrome numbers from our campers.
Okay.
So hopefully this one's better than that. Or meaning I'm hoping that more people chose not to like it.
Okay.
Because it's not good. So
well, let me give you the comparison. So remember the immunity syndrome was 68.8%. A private little war, 75% of people said they would watch a private little war.
Would give it a see it. That's wow.
Yeah.
That just hurt my chest a little bit.
Oh, then let's get more of those.
That is extremely surprising to me. I'm gonna have to go back and watch this again to see if I have any change of heart because it's just and even when the Mugatu bites Kirk is like I mean it's not even a good poisoning scene. It's just like oh god, I'm very disappointed in those numbers, people.
Kirk
we can do
has
better
the equivalent. Kirk has the equivalent of space rabies, and it's just it's not good. But yeah, wow. 75%.
Incredibly surprising.
We're gonna try and power through the remaining 7 episodes, Dan. Maybe we'll do it in short order because I know we're getting on in the recording time. And we thank everybody for staying with us as long as you have. And that takes us to episode number 20, and that is Return to Tomorrow. After receiving a distress signal from a planet deep in the galaxy and far from the last charted area, the Enterprise is contacted by a life form of pure energy that wishes to take control of Kirk and Spock's bodies with the intention to build new mechanized bodies for themselves. Dan, we'll just let you go first from here on in.
Yeah, see it. I've always enjoyed this. Have no fear. Sargon is here, baby. One of the great bloopers of Star Trek. I like it. I like Spock's portrayal of Amok. I like Diane's Muldaur's performance of Thalassa. I love the idea. Of course, something goes wrong because something always has to go wrong. It's never going to be a perfect episode. And Amok is a little crazy. But yeah, this is a see it for me.
This is definitely a see it for me as well. I used to not like this episode, but I've grown to appreciate it. I think it's a complex story, and I think it's well played by Nimoy, Muldaur, and Shatner in particular. I think this is great science fiction, honestly. Yeah. And this is part of the reason why Star Trek resonates with so many people is because it's great stories well told. So
one of the things I like also about this bill, it's just a small thing, is the scream that Uhura gives just by the way that Amok is staring down at her in that one scene on the bridge, I think is just fantastic. I love that scene. Yeah.
Agreed. Camp Kittimer, 68.8% would see this episode.
Good.
Risk is our business, Dan. Risk is our business. What could possibly go wrong? It's the famous Star Trek question, right?
Yes.
Or in Star Wars, they say, I've got a bad feeling about this. So episode 21, as we move along, Patterns of Force. The crew of the Enterprise visits a planet dominated by a Nazi culture and at war with its planetary neighbor. Dan, go ahead.
Gonna give it a see it. Every TV show in history has to have some kind of a Nazi episode thrown in there somewhere. So why not Star Trek? Space Nazis. Plus, Bill and I stood on the same steps that Kirk and Spock had captured when we visited the sets in Hollywood. So that and alone is enough to make me give it a see it.
Yeah, it's actually a building on the Paramount lot that's still there to this day.
Yep.
When you stand in front of it, it is obvious that it's from that episode. I say a see it also. it's almost a cautionary tale these days with the events of what's going on. But in the scope of the 60s, it's an engaging enough story about the perils of fascism and what it can do to a society. I think this is great allegory told in a unique way because, other shows aren't going to do this sort of parallel world that adopts Nazism. But I absolutely would see this one, Dan.
Yep.
For sure. Camp Kittimer and Patreon, 75% would see Patterns of Force and 25% would skip it. That could be emblematic of the times we live in today.
True.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I think it's tough to judge, but we go on to episode number 22, and that is, of course, By Any Other Name. Kirk, Spock, and Bones and some crew members of no interest beam down to a planet's surface to find a group of people who demand Kirk surrender the ship. These aliens from the Andromeda Galaxy steal the Enterprise, technologically modify it, and attempt to return home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dan, what say you?
This is the most barely see it that you can possibly have. I went back and forth like at least 10 times on whether I was going to give this see it or skip it. I went with see it because the cubes are kind of cool, especially the shock value when he crumples one up and says that person is dead. That's pretty awesome. I would have loved to have seen what these aliens looked like in their real form, but I understand that you couldn't do that back in the 60s. But if anything for saving this episode and giving you to see it is it's green. Exactly that, what Helen just said. That scene with Scotty drinking with the alien is pretty funny, and I've always enjoyed it.
And I love how we get Scotty's theme behind that part of it too, which is great. This for me is a skip it. Believe it or not.
It could have easily been a skip it for me too, man.
And this is meh part 3. This is my third meh of the season. And I look at it this way. You mean we just had to be nice to you and you'd help us after you told us twice already? Yes, dummy with a bad toupee. That's true. And no, for once, I don't mean Shatner.
You mean, and the way Kirk responds, like, no, but we'd welcome friends.
And no, I don't mean Shatner's a dummy. I want to be clear here. I love William Shatner. I'm going for comic effect.
Yeah.
So yeah, that line just really gets me. Camp Kittimer, 56.3%. It's a narrow margin for see it.
Barely. Yeah.
But that's how many would see it, 43.8 saying they would skip. I still watch this one, but if I had my way, I'd skip it, I just don't think it adds a lot. And I really don't like the Chief Andromedan. I just don't believe him at all.
Agreed.
And that toupee really just distracts me.
He's a tool bag.
You're a tool bag. So anyway, Dan, we move on to, I know, a massive favorite of people everywhere, the Omega Glory. Captain Kirk must battle a deadly virus and a treacherous fellow Starfleet captain to stop a meaningless intertribal war on a planet that for some reason has the equivalent of Russians, Yankees, and the USS. Well, not the USS Constitution, but the United States Constitution.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the USS Constitution is a big wooden ship in Boston Harbor.
Yes.
Well, Charlestown Harbor, but
it could be there too. You never know. Stranger shit has happened in this episode.
It really has. Speaking of strange shit, Dan, see it or skip it?
This is a skip it for me. Now, this could be blasphemous for some people. I just don't like this episode. Or at the very least, it's am I un-American for saying I don't like it? I can be on board with a planet taking a book about the Chicago mobs of the 20s and basing their society off it way more than I can with Yangs and Coms and Constitutions just being a coincidence. It just doesn't work. And now, even though I don't like this episode at all, and I would skip it, Kirk's speech is legendary, and everyone should see that part of the episode at least once. But that's the only part of this episode that matters.
I'm going to challenge you on that, and I say see it because if for no other reason than to see Kirk fight Captain Tracy with his ass.
Yes,
because we've talked about this when we covered this episode.
Yes,
many years ago. That's really the thing that I take away in this episode is Captain Kirk grabs onto that wall of baskets or whatever the heck that is and throws his ass at Captain Tracy. I think that's worth it alone, Dan. And I really think that you should revisit your stance on this one. Would you care to take a guess as to how the vote went for this in Camp Kittimer and the Patreonicals?
I'm guessing that this is going to be only the second episode of the season that is underwater. I don't know by how much, but it's less than 50%.
Wow. You mean for See It?
Yeah, most people are going to skip this, I think.
Wow, you are right on the money.
What's the total?
56.3% of respondents said they would skip this episode.
Close. Oh, Haley wouldn't.
But it's underwater. Only 43.8% said they would see it.
I just can't get over the whole fact that it's just such a coincidence that all this stuff happened here. I've never really liked it.
There's only so many times we can do the whole parallel Earth thing before it becomes, kind of a fatigued trope. And I think that we've reached it here, honestly. But still, there are elements of it I like, and I still, I'd see it probably, but yeah, it's not a great episode. I tend to agree.
I guess if anything, it's kind of cool seeing the uniforms just with like little salt pieces strewn about on the bridge. That's kind of cool.
Well, Dan, this brings us to episode 24. We're almost to the end. Thank God I won't have to talk to you anymore. And that is, of course, the ultimate computer.
Mm-hmm.
With most of the Enterprise crew disembarked, a new M5 Multitronic system is installed to test if it can control the Enterprise and manage operations aboard. And, of course, things go wrong. Naturally. I mean, that's pretty much what you would expect. Mm-hmm. Dan, see it or skip it?
See it. Absolutely see it. Make no mistake. I love Dr. Daystrom. I love the character and the mythos that surrounds him as we see his name everywhere in Star Trek's future. I love the Enterprise going toe-to-toe with several starships and the crew's just sitting there scratching their heads. I love the M5. I love Captain Dunsel. I love this episode. See it.
Before I get into my rating, I just want to say how Daystrom does nothing but fail in the history of this episode. They talk about as other failures. This is a failure of abject proportions. And yet, in the future, we've named all kinds of shit after this guy.
I have two theories on that.
Okay, well, let me give my rating and then you can give your theory, okay?
Yeah.
I say this is a See It, and I look at it from this perspective. In today's era of AI and the concerns that are obviously raised with humans losing jobs, I think that this episode in particular is still very relevant. I think this is what the best of Star Trek does. I think that when you can hold up that mirror regardless of what year it is, and it's still relevant and prescient to some extent, I think that it's an outstanding episode, and that's exactly how I feel about the Ultimate Computer, Dan.
M5, Skynet, Amazon, Apple, it's all the same. It's all the same stuff.
Well,
two theories. Two theories. One, the Multitronic system was his highlight, his pinnacle, and it took several iterations. But before that, he had a good career of stuff, and then he started falling off the wagon, so to speak. But then after this mental breakdown, which in my opinion, this could be a good example of how having a breakdown and having issues, you can pick yourself up and be extremely successful and do good. And maybe after this episode is where all the stuff that he does in his career really helps the Federation and Starfleet, which is why there's so many buildings named after him and all this stuff and Discovery and stuff like that.
That's fair, although we never really get that context later on in Trek, It's always just, it's the Daystrom Institute. It's the preeminent research facility. It's like, okay, is there another Dr. Daystrom? Because the one we saw wasn't getting it done.
Building on my work.
Dan, the Ultimate Computer is one of the ultimate episodes of the season for Camp Kittimer and Patreonicals. 93.8% of people voting in the poll said they would see this episode, and I think rightfully so.
Nice.
Great episode. Dan, we move on to the penultimate episode in season 2 of Star Trek, and that is, of course, Bread and Circuses, the one where sweatshirts apparently were on sale at the local Woolworths.
Belichick cutoff hoodie.
I know, yeah. And with the funky little chain thing here going on. I love the whole cutoff aspect here that Spock has going on. That's pretty awesome. Britain Circuses, Captain Kirk and his companions are forced to fight in gladiatorial games. Another one where we got gladiators of sorts on a planet with a civilization similar to the Roman Empire, except for all those TV cameras and the announcers and stuff.
Yeah.
Dan, see it or skip it, my friend.
So this is the third episode this season. You had a planet that looks like Chicago mobs, a planet that's like the Yankees and communists and the Constitution, and now this gladiator thing. This is the biggest skip it I think I could come up with. There is nothing in this episode that I like. There is not a single thing. I even find things that I like in Miri and God forbid, and the children shall lead. So this has got to tell you something, that there's not one thing in this that I like. Skip it. Throw it out. Trash can.
How do you really feel?
This episode sucks.
Oh, okay. I'm right there with you. This is a skip it for me. Oh my God, this episode is a mess. I was done with it as soon as they introduced the TV cameras. Okay. It's dumb. It's not executed well. It brings together way too many tropes already just from Star Trek. And it really feels like this is one they just needed to fulfill the season order. We see some reuse of some set pieces. I don't know. I don't know why they did this episode, because frankly, it's terrible.
Yeah.
On a side note, I think that Sunkatsi handled this kind of episode much better. Because if you think about it,
really thought about that.
Sunkatsi has a lot of the same DNA as Bread and Circuses, except it's not a former Starfleet person. But I mean, there's fights that are distributed on TV and or the equivalent of TV. And I thought that was a much better episode by comparison, but this absolutely is a skip it.
And it has Jeffrey Combs in that one too. So
it does, and J.G. Hertzler and The Rock.
Yes.
Bread and Circuses. This surprises me a little bit. 68.8% said they would see this episode.
What are you people talking
about? What are you talking about? That really did surprise me.
Yeah, that's very surprising. Wow.
And Dan, this takes us to the season finale of season 2, almost the last episode of Star Trek, before it was revealed to be renewed for season 3.
Yeah.
Fans thought this was going to be it before NBC made that famous announcement. And we are, of course, talking about Assignment Earth. During a historical research mission in 1968, the Enterprise encounters Gary 7, a human from the future who appears to be attempting to alter history. Obviously, this serves as a backdoor pilot for a series Gene was trying to sell to the network. Assignment Earth, Dan, go.
Yeah, I gave this a see it. I've always liked this episode a lot. So-called pilot for a new show really could have worked well if they kept the Star Trek aspect tied to it. I think by itself, it just would not have really worked all that well. I am no fan of the late Terry Garr, and she made it quite clear that she hated being in this role. But it's still a great episode for me. Time travel to what was at the time the present was kind of interesting to see that all the way back to the 60s. Futuristic spies showing up with magic pens. What's not to like?
Well, let me tell you, because this is a skip it for me.
I figured.
I think this is one of the worst TOS episodes. In fact, it's one of my least favorites of the season.
Interesting.
If I were stack ranking the episodes, I think this one would be dead last for me. Robert Lansing is boring. Terry Garr is awful. And this whole story is dumb. It doesn't even work as a backdoor pilot. And to me, it's no wonder the network wasn't interested in this. And honestly, Doctor Who has already been doing this for years. So just watch that, okay? Because Doctor Who does it much better. Essentially, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a guy with a sonic screwdriver who goes around in a British phone booth compared to a guy with something that looks like a sonic screwdriver who goes through this portal in his office. It's the same damn thing.
You would put this below And the Children Shall Lead?
I didn't say that because And the Children Shall Lead isn't in this season.
Oh, for this season. Okay, I misunderstood you. I thought you meant like the bottom. Okay.
No, gotcha. If I were stack ranking this season, this one would probably be at the bottom for me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, no, I really don't like it. And that's because I really don't have anything invested in these characters. And like I said, I think Doctor Who does this much better.
Do you like what they did when they brought back a little aspect of this in Picard?
No.
Okay.
I didn't like that at all. I didn't like it in Prodigy either.
Yeah. Okay. Just curious.
Setting up Wesley was literally set up as a Time Lord.
Yeah.
And I was like, come on, guys.
Gotcha.
On. So for the finale in Camp Kittimer and Patreonicals, Dan, 81.3% said they would see this particular episode. That's high for something that doesn't have a whole lot of Starfleet in it.
Yeah.
So let's look at the totals before we say goodnight to everybody.
This is amazing.
So Dan, you hit 21 out of 26 episodes as a see it. That's only 5 that you marked as skipping for a total of 80.77%. So 80.77, 21 out of 26.
That's a high one for all of my see it's or skip it's.
Yeah. I am probably in the middle of my percentages. I only had 15 of 26, which is 57.69%. So just under 60% for me, which is, I thought I would actually rate this season a lot higher, quite honestly.
Yeah. Brian, what did you have? Oh, never mind.
Oh, what a jerk.
Ouch. Had to do it, Brian. Love you, buddy.
What a jerk. Dan, final thoughts on season 2.
I love season 2. It's a fun season. There's a lot of different things. I agree with Helen. 23 out of 26. That's pretty awesome.
That's pretty amazing.
It's a fun season. And it'll be interesting when we do season 3 of TOS where that pans out, because I know a lot of people are not happy with season 3 with budget cuts and stuff like that, but it's going to be interesting to see how we come out with our rankings when we do that one.
I think I might rank that one higher than you. But I suppose the proof will be in the ranking, won't it?
I think it will. It will.
Well, Dan, that's going to do it for TOS season 2. I'm going to stop the stream here. So everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you hanging in with us through the technical difficulties and stuff. We hope you all have a great night, and we'll let you know when the finished episode is ready for next week. Until then, live long and prosper, y'all. We send you lots of love.
See you, everybody. Coconut.